Hi, everyone. So, this is my podcast, Anything But Ordinary. My name is Yulia, and I've been doing this podcast before. When I was in US, I started that. I like to interview different people and I like to see how they live, what they do, what are their hobbies, basically everything. Everything and anything because I think that all of us we do have something interesting inside of us, and not only celebrities have to show off like how good they are and what struggles they go through. I think we deserve that too. We are ordinary people, but kind of not, you know. That's the thing. So my guest today is Mr. Brendan.
Hi.
He is a very awesome human being, same as the cameraman behind. So um, I actually want to like start as usual, like, please introduce yourself. Tell me about, where you're from, what, like, what do you remember about your childhood? And we'll go from it.
Okay. Okay. So just start off with who I am, what I do.
Yay.
First question.
Yay.
Okay, and I'm gonna face you the whole time.
Yay. Feel free.
And if you hear me coughing a lot, I'm sorry about that. Sorry
I
about
can
it.
share my water.
It's okay. I have enough.
Because
It'll
you
go
do?
away eventually. Yeah.
Okay.
It'll go away. It'll be fine.
Okay.
My name is Brendan, as you know, as everybody knows. My name is Brendan. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, or like Illinois, Cahokia area. That area.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to say like a big city name than like the small little baby
Right.
towns outside of it. Um, I am 29 years young and aging every day.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's great.
So what about your family? So how was your family? How many sisters and brothers you had? Like what was your house look like? What was your like neighborhood look like?
Um, Gross. I I have six siblings. Um, Four of them are from a different marriage, so but we still grew up really close, at least in the household, because we all loved our mom a lot. So we put a lot of differences aside. So there was six. Still talk to three, four, somewhere around that number. I have three sisters, and I have three brothers.
Nice.
So yeah,
So it's kind of even split.
yeah, I was the tiebreaker. So
Nice.
my three sisters' names are the oldest is insert name. The second oldest sister is Debbie, and then the third oldest sister is Brittany. She's the one closest in age to me. Then there's the three brothers. There is brother number one, which is Bobby. Then there's brother number two, which is an insert name situation. And then there's brother number three, which is the brother that's closest to me in age, which is Tony or Lawrence or Anthony. He has a lot of names.
Honestly, I have heard that this is now like the month of like Black awareness and Black History Month.
Mm.
So I know that you told before that you have like mixed parents. So like your one half is white and one half is black. Could you please
Mm.
tell more about this? Honestly, because for me, like I grew up in Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know this much about America. It was Cold War at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I have freaking zero knowledge. Then, like, you study, then you enter university, and you never think about, should I read about history of US? Yeah, we
Mm-hmm.
kind of had a chapter, and that was it.
Well, that's how a lot of places are. I don't think
Truly, yeah.
whenever we learned about Russia, we didn't go in like in-depth explanations
Yeah,
of the
like, oh,
Soviet
I
Union
know,
and
like,
Russia
how
and
it
all
was,
that. Yeah.
yeah.
So of course we focus more on our own country whenever we learn
Right.
about history, and it's much easier to have a better face as a country to other countries whenever other countries don't know how bad your country is on the inside.
Or good.
Yeah, bad.
Yeah.
So
So that's why whenever like when I came to US, I did not know. I thought like literally that everything is good and nice, and I expected that something like Korea, but I saw different things.
oh, it's much different. Really,
Yeah,
really different.
but also like I also thought all the time that people are always like same, equal, everybody's like, and then I came
Oh no.
and I'm like,
Oh
it's not.
no, no, no,
And
no,
like the
no.
thing is like people outside who have never been, have never lived, or even traveled, but they have never lived, they don't know.
Yeah.
And they
So
don't understand even what's going on. So could you please tell me about your childhood?
Yeah, so
And
I
the
grew
rough
up
in
in
general.
yeah, I grew up in a multiracial family. So my mom was married before she met my dad. Her first husband was white, and their marriage ended on not great terms
Oh,
because of a lot of not great reasons.
things happen.
uh, yeah, abuse happens.
Oh,
Um, so that marriage ended. She ended up meeting my dad a couple of years later. My dad is black. And she had 4 kids from that marriage, and she moved in with my dad and had another 3 kids. So 2 of my siblings are biracial like myself, so
hmm.
half white, half black, and then the other ones are fully white. So I think growing up, I had a
I remember some of your stories.
childhood was, I feel like you kind of frame how you see your childhood, like the stories that come out of it, people are always like, wow, your childhood sounds really crazy and kind of rough. And I'm like, yeah, it was kind of fun and kind of weird and kind of bad,
Because
but
you were
kind of
still
fun.
happy,
Yeah,
you
well, you got to
know?
find happiness in
Yeah,
everywhere. Like if you only ever know like hardship, of course, like the times that seem less like hardship are gonna, it's going to even itself out. But kids
yeah.
that had like really like normal childhoods are always like, wow, you had a really hard time growing up. I'm like, nah, yeah, it is what it is. So I dealt with like a lot of racism in the family. So my brother, the one that I don't necessarily talk to anymore, he grew up with a predominantly racist family on my mom and grandma's side. Like there's fully land in Illinois that my family on my mom's side owns that I'm not allowed to go visit. Even like I was telling Rolando one day,
How
even
come?
racism. They just don't like the fact that I'm half black. And were enrailed against my mom whenever they found out that she was pregnant by and going to marry a black person.
What's the
So
I okay, I really don't understand what's the difference between color, honestly, because for me it's just a
mm,
person.
there's a lot of history in America with color. Like for a long time in
Yes.
America, we went through slavery, 400 years of it, and
Yes.
black people were seen as objects that were brought over here to like a means to an end, to do a task, to help the economy, and they were seen as property. So like it's of course hard whenever you have put yourself on a hierarchy for so long in a country as this. I'm a person, I'm a white person, and I own this black going to put quotations around that because they saw black people as like something that you could trade, sell, and buy,
Yeah.
like a farm tool is how they saw them, and
Yeah, but
so
the things like what we learn at school,
mhm,
that it's gone. Now everybody's equal. US is like pure
mm,
democracy. Everybody's equal. That's what we learn.
it's
And
absolutely
then
still not that way.
and that's what I saw too, and I'm like, huh? And I dealt with this too a little bit
Mm,
because I'm still a foreigner, I'm not American fully. So,
yeah.
of course, I'm like, what?
So there's been different iterations of like racism and how racism affects black people through the years. Like even after slavery was abolished, we moved into the next form of slavery. Slavery never is gone; it just changes form. And so like we're still experiencing different forms of slavery today. Systemic slavery is like the biggest one
I
currently.
heard the term systemic racism, and I was like, I think I even saw that with my own eyes.
Yeah. So we move into like even like the 70s, 60s, there was still racial segregation in schools. Like black people couldn't go to school with white people.
Yeah.
It was still pretty bad. And my mom was
Soviet
born,
Union was fighting that.
yeah.
So,
So my mom was born in the 50s. And I think 52. I don't remember what year
same
exactly.
as my mom.
Yep. Well, there you go. My mom had me pretty late in life. I was a surprise, the greatest surprise of her life. Um, and so she grew up in a time where it was like completely okay. Being racist towards black people was really okay. So it was really weird for a woman of her age, especially, to consider a relationship with a black man.
So she
It
was a
was,
rebel for them.
yes, super. My mom was super that way. Loved railing against systems. She would like tease her hair, and she was kind of like the cool girl at school. I saw like all of her clubs that she was in. She was very, yeah, power to the people, love black people, love white people, everyone should get along. Just nobody else felt that way. So she married a white man at first, and that white man turned out to be not a great man. And then she got with my dad, um, but it wasn't at like no cost. She
Mhm.
lost a lot of connections with family members Like a lot of people cut her off and told her that it was disgraceful and bad for our race, bad for the white race that she was marrying a black man, or that she was pregnant by first and then was marrying a black man. So there was like levels to her sin.
Oh my God.
So like I said, even like on my grandma's funeral, I was told, like, my cousin Tim like tried to make it a joke, but like not really a joke. We were going down to Hackett Hole, where my family on my mom's side owns property. And my cousin Tim was like, you should probably just put this jacket over you, just so that, while we're driving through here, because I don't want anything bad to happen to you. And I was like, wow.
So your cousin was worried that he can't protect you,
Yeah, like just
but
worried
also
that,
he was worried that other people will attack you.
yeah. So it's just how it is. There's certain areas that you don't go to as a black person in America because they're called sundown towns, a lot of them. So next to my college town was a sundown town named Anna. And so I don't know if I can say this. A sundown town is a place where black people are not allowed to go after dark because harm will come to them if they're caught in that area after dark. And the sundown town
Oh my God.
next to my college town was called Anna, and it was called Anna, like we called an acronym, Ain't No Allowed. So
My goodness.
that's why it was called Anna. And so racism is still super prevalent in America. People are still experiencing it today, like forcing black people into ghettos and then like instituting different laws. This is why we call it systemic, because it's a system raging against a race. So redlining in America is still a really big issue. So not allowing kids that are impoverished, a lot of times it is going to be black
Yeah.
youth because they had a later start as a race because we were not considered people in America for such a long time as our white counterparts. So we grow up in rougher neighborhoods. But if you
Because
grow,
I heard that like the school just doesn't get the funding because oh you already
that's
have
right.
low grades, and they never know that because in Russia just everybody's like poor. You either you're rich and you go to private schools and blah blah
Hmm.
blah all this shit, or you're just all equally just okay. Here's public school. That's it.
Hmm. So public school is like it's funded partly by the taxes that you pay in an area. So like if people are
Oh,
able to buy homes, then the school is going to get more money. That's how the
I
government
see.
also decides who they give money to, is how much taxes the home buyers in that area pay.
Pure capitalism.
So, exactly.
Yeah.
So, in areas where parents can't afford to spend money and buy homes and they have to rent or like live in apartment complexes,
Yep.
there's no property taxes that are going in for the government to go, oh, they pay high property taxes. Let me give
And
this school more
yeah,
money. So, if a school has less money, a school has um, less resources to provide the children with.
right.
There's no after school activities. There's no clubs. There's no groups. There's no nothing to be in.
Just like how
So
are they gonna pay for this, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So then the kids have less incentive to go be at school, have less incentive to go read and to go write and to like
Mm-hmm.
participate in the high school that they go to or into the elementary or middle school that they go to. There's going to be like more dated books. My books, even compared to my cousin's books who were going to school in like
Mm-hmm.
a Collinsville, like 2 or 3 towns over,
Mm-hmm.
was way better. Their books were way more up to date with history, with mathematics, with everything. So I had not by no fault of my own.
Yeah.
I by all means shouldn't have gone to the school that I've gone to if it was based off of just like academic
Knowledge.
prowess.
Yeah.
So I was like, it's all about the area. Capitalism has infected America in this way. And that's why people like, if you talk to black people, they're like, oh, capitalism is racist. It's racist in nature because we'll never get ahead now because there are systems in place that are financial, but we were kept at such a financial disadvantage for so long that
Yeah.
there's no way to, tighten your bootstraps and like pull yourself up by them because we were never given bootstraps. So, um,
How
all that
about
racism exists there. And so, like, whenever you're talking about marrying outside of your race who you perceive to be better because of financial education, so on and so forth, of course, you're like, you're going to go and get with that uneducated black man, you know, he ain't going to amount to nothing. You're going to be homeless. And, that's the kind of like flack that my mom received whenever she was entertaining a relationship with my father.
it's just again like we also had slavery in Russia, but just
Mm-hmm.
like for us it's just like same color more or less. We have different nationalities like in
Mm-hmm.
Russia, like different like again, my mom is Russian, but
Hmm.
my dad is from Tatarstan, so like I'm still like also like a mixture of these two cultures because my dad's culture is Muslim and my mom's culture is Orthodox.
Hmm.
So it's also like, but it wasn't like that, again, we suffer equally. It's just,
Mm.
again, it's either you're poor or you're rich in Russia. That's it. Middle
So
class is so thin that it's almost
what it's boiling
non-existent.
down to is eat the rich. That's what I'm getting from your statement. All rich people should go away.
Yay! I'm still, I'm,
It's a problem globally. Like the wealth disparity is so insane
yeah,
globally that
yeah,
it's so hard for anybody to get ahead. And then like you throw racism in, and then you throw in
exactly.
policing and all these other systems that are terrible, and then you have America. And that's as an American, I was raised as like a patriot. My mom loved America, and she loved the idea of a
I mean, it's
democratic
still your
system.
country.
So
It's
of
still your
course, like
country with your
there's
parents.
still
You will still love it.
love. It's a strong word. Um, but I certainly like aspects of America. I like that my sisters and my brothers live there. I like that my nieces and nephews are there.
Yeah.
There's not much else that I like about it. I don't like that we don't have health insurance. I don't like that.
Ooh, that's a very, very
I don't
bad
like.
subject, right?
Yeah, health insurance is terrible, and
Yep.
our inflated prices for healthcare is insane. And being in Korea,
Mm-hmm.
I was I was worried that I had a blood clot in my leg, and I was talking to one of my Korean coworkers about it the other day, and I was like, "Man, I really need to go get like a CT done on my leg," and she was like, "Oh, it's so expensive." I was like, "Yeah, I know, like $20,000 essentially," and she was like, "20,000 of what?" I was like, "U.S. dollars to go to do a hospital visit," and she was like, "No, it's like 100,000 won.
Yeah.
It's like $80 USD."
Yeah.
And it's so mind-boggling to me.
Yeah. So that's why after coming from Korea to America, and when I had a car accident and they had to do a CT on my neck,
Hmm.
and it was almost $6,000 for that
Hmm.
shit.
Hmm.
Sorry. So, and I was like, what? And I was
Um,
like, this is not true. And I was like, maybe they wrote wrong zero there. No,
no,
no.
part of my job was even going in, and I worked as a paralegal.
Yes,
Yeah,
but like tell me about your school first, and then we can move to your law school and then to your job. I want to hear
yeah.
that. What made you like put this effort into studying that? Because like we start like from your from your family, and
Mm,
then we switch to this like racism subject, which is like very sensitive
mhm.
too.
Yeah.
What
So
about your school? Was it a good school?
it was a state school, so like as good as state schools can be. So it got me an education. It got me a pretty star to put on my resume to say I'm educated, at least with a bachelor's. And honestly, the reason why I got into the field was job retention.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up poor, so like I shouldn't have grown up poor. My dad made like 50K a year, but we had to make that 50K stretch between multiple family units because he was
Yeah.
taking care of some of my mom's kids from her first marriage and floating them a lot of money, even though they'll never admit it, and floating them a lot of money. And my dad worked two full-time jobs too. So
Man.
I grew up poor, so like in my mind, I was like, I need something that I can have job security in for the rest of my life, where I can go and I
Mm-hmm.
can pick it back up. And because the field is so small, and like candidates like me are so few, that everybody will take me as a serious applicant. And I was like, I went to the office, and not a lot of college kids have the foresight to go do that. But I grew up poor, and I knew that I didn't want to be poor forever. And so I was like, I want to know about job retention. Like, what degrees offer the best job retention? Like, who leaves this
Nice.
program, and who has jobs whenever they leave?
That's smart.
And so they're like engineering, and I was like,
Not my cup
nope,
of tea.
chemist, no, no. I was looking for honestly a degree that I could just like read all the time, and that
Mm-hmm.
I could turn that into money. And so I was like, what is paralegal studies? What is the pre-law route for paralegal studies? And they're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, well, why don't you go back and talk to the director of the program? So I went back, I talked to Dan Silver, shout out Dan Silver. I went back and I talked to Dan Silver, and he was the director of the paralegal program at that time. And like he kind of went over like my aspirations for the field and all this other stuff. And I already had interest in law. I was big into
Mm-hmm.
law and order. I loved it. So
You look like a person who would literally be like mega professional, will be in the suit and be like, I'll fight for every cent for you.
yeah, I don't have to be in the commercials, luckily. Was I in one commercial? I was in one commercial, I think.
You see, I saw that.
But I
I
just had to be
saw that.
like a person that was like I helped insert name get their money, and I'm insert name's paralegal. So it was like so cheesy, but like I loved it. Love you, love you, love you, Brian. Anyways, so I got into it because I wanted to make sure that I had job security, that I wanted to make sure that no matter what happened to the economy, that I would have a place that I could go work at and feel safe and feel like I wasn't replaceable.
Yeah.
So I talked to the director about that, and I was like, well, what is your job retention? What percentage of your alum come out of school and then go right into a profession? And he was like 98%. And I was like, can
That's
you prove
high.
it? And he was like, yeah. He said, because in order to graduate, you guys have to intern for free at a law firm. And there was law firms galore in my town. And personal injury wanted that. So I went and I just took all the information and I talked to my best friend about it. And she was like, yeah, we'll both do it. So we went and we declared I went in as a history major, believe it or not. I thought that you had to declare a major in order to get into school so that you wouldn't look like you were indecisive. So I declared history, but I hated taking history classes. It was just like rote memorization for me. So I was like, it's not for me. So I was like, what's something that I can feel like I'm doing something? And so the pre-law had like a lot of research. So like you would get a case and then you'd have to do research on that case and then find law that's good for that case. And that felt more interesting to me.
My goodness.
So that's why I ended up. They think that college kids don't have a lot of insight whenever it comes to choosing degrees and whenever it comes to choosing paths, but I really did. I really looked for a field that was kind of niche, and so I wouldn't have oversaturation, so that like everybody would be like, I'm gonna go get a paralegal degree so I can go work at insert law firm in downtown St. Louis. The field will never be oversaturated because it's so small. Like you hardly ever hear about it unless they're going to law school afterward. It's like a lot of my friends, I would say 75% of my class like graduated and went right to law school to become lawyers as opposed to becoming just paralegals. So
they wanted to go.
And there's like a big money difference, but like I was okay with making between like 50 to 80, which was like the range for like a paralegal with 1 to 5 years experience. Now, if I work at a bigger firm and I have 10 plus years experience, I can look at 100.
Yeah.
So like I was like, I grew up poor, so I was like, that's huge money for me. So that's why I ended up going into the field that I ended up going into. And I liked it a lot. I learned a lot I was taught by mostly all attorneys. And so I'm not intimidated easily because of it, because I had to sit there and defend myself or defend a point or something like that with an attorney who had like 10 plus years of experience and a law degree.
Dang.
And so like it was pretty rigorous. Like we're one of the, I went to SIU, Southern Illinois University, Carbondale, and we're one of the only like law board approved paralegal programs in the country. So the bar comes and they do like a review with us, and they like look at like our curriculum and like what we're being taught and like sit in on a lesson, and then like they give you approval that you get accreditation from the bar association.
But do you have to go to bar exam or no?
No, that's for attorneys. Like that's after you go.
So they have to take it.
Yeah. So like we also are like we're a big part of like Illinois. There's like a whole like whenever you graduate, you can join like this society of paralegals.
Oh.
And so like you get invited to dinners and stuff. So I got to go sit down and talk to a bunch of attorneys and paralegals from all over
I mean,
Illinois.
that's how you network, I guess.
Yeah. So I have a lot of great connections with a lot of great attorneys and a lot of great paralegals from all over.
But did your parents help you when you were studying? Because again, in my case, because in Russia it's like that. Well, most of the times it's like parents, if they can help you like while you're studying, because I got to study for free, but because the dorm was not free, my food was not free, so my parents were trying to give me some money. And then like from like third degree I started already taking my part-time job, so I was already like, okay, I need to do something to help my parents pay. So but I know that in America it's different.
No, college is so expensive.
So yeah, the prices are so skyrocketed,
and they go up every year. They go up every year, and thank God that you get grandfathered in your first year, because it went up exponentially between my first and last year. So so my brother-in-law Aaron went to the same school I went to, and he paid $10,000 a semester or $10,000 a year before I got there. By the time I got there 9 years later, I was paying $24,000 a year for school.
Dang.
And all of that's out of my pocket. So like you can get grants, there was at that time they took away one of the grants too. A grant is money that the government gives you that you don't need to pay back.
Right.
They
It's
took
kind of
away
like,
one of them.
here's a gift from
You
us.
can get a MAP and a Pell Grant from the government back whenever I was in school, and
Hmm.
you got grandfathered in, but you had to submit a FAFSA in order to get it, which is like your family's financial information in order to get into school. So like aside from that, that 24 $25,000 like price that I would have had to pay comes out of pocket. Then colleges in America say if you're a freshman, you have to stay on campus, so you have to pay room and board.
Oh,
So I
dang.
had to pay room and board. I could not find my first year of lease. I could not find a place outside of it that was cheaper.
Yeah.
Um, and then you again, if you don't submit your FAFSA like on the first of the year, like on January 1st, your money goes down because it's first come first serve. That's how they give out money.
Oh my
And then you have to,
God.
and if you don't apply soon enough, you got to pay for like a Sally Mae loan, which is like a super high interest loan that can like accumulate thousands of more dollars as time goes on.
Oh no.
So America right now is that we have like a student debt bubble like
Yeah.
boiling in America that will pop eventually.
Yeah.
But in short, no, my parents weren't allowed to help. School was way too expensive. So it was kind of on me. My mom didn't even want to, she didn't want me to go to school. So she like I needed her financial information in order to go to school.
Hmm.
She didn't give it to me. You're supposed to submit your FAFSA on January 1st in order to get the maximum amount that you can get.
Hmm.
I didn't get it in. I got it in July after I was accepted. So I had no money to go to school essentially. So I had to hustle and like call lenders and really fight. If I wanted to go to school, I had to fight for it. So I
Dang.
got lenders that gave me money and I was able to pay for it. And then I was like, I can't afford to go to school next semester unless I figure something out.
Yeah.
So I applied my second semester of freshman year. I applied to be an RA and I got it per. And so RA, whenever you get an RA position, they pay for your room and for your food. So like I was able to stay
Nice.
on campus for free and eat, and I got $150 stipend a month. My dad could not help pay for school at that point in time, so I knew it was on me. So like I had to get a job outside of it. There was a lot of stuff I was doing to pay for school. I was working my ass off and I was pre-law at that. Like I didn't just have a paralegal degree. I was pre-law paralegal studies, so I was
Man.
preparing for law school. So it was really intense as a program, honestly. Lots of research. Like lots of hours spent up at 3 a.m. on Westlaw with my student login.
I still just don't know how you still manage to combine these two things, because I think it's pretty intense, because in America you have to drive a lot stuff, because
Yeah,
if you're working somewhere and your studies here, it means you drive.
it just meant sleeping less. So,
Yeah, and like,
yeah,
when you say studying at 3 a.m., so I kind of like think like, did you have like 2 hours sleep, 3 hours sleep?
yeah, I do now too. I think
Oh
that my
no.
sleep schedule for the rest of my life will be ruined because of college, because I was overworking myself. Like after I left my RA position because I wanted to like have the experience of like living in like a real apartment
Hmm.
my senior year. So my senior year of college, I left my RA position. There was a lot of drama with my RA position too, but I left my RA position and I moved into an apartment, and the school still was giving me a little bit of money to pay for my apartment, but I still had to hustle. I needed to work. So
Hmm.
I remember at one point in time, it was like my last semester of school. I was working as I had done my internship at a firm. I was offered a job at that firm. Shout out Beard Law Firm. I was offered a job after I graduated at that firm.
Hmm.
And then I was over the summer, I was like it like last semester and over the summer, I was working at the movie theater. I was working as a freelance paralegal for the firm. I was going in and reorganizing their filing system and a bunch of
Nice.
different stuff like that. And I was working at like Taco Bell. So I had three jobs and I was still in school. So I had an apartment, but man, I had three jobs and I was
Three
in school my last
jobs.
semester. So it was intense. It was an intense year. And I just remember like waking up, I would go to bed at like 4 a.m. and I would wake up at like 7 a.m. to like start my day and to get going because that was all the time I could allot myself.
I have another question, because you tell about apartment, and the thing is like, I'm sorry, I got used to Korea where it's like it's safe everywhere.
Hmm.
So the word safe does not even come to your mind. You just live here, you're like, okay. But in America,
Mm,
I remember when I came, and Rolanda is like, it's not safe in here. And I'm like, eh? Like, what are you talking about? Like,
You want
No,
to?
like, what do you mean not safe? He's like, you don't notice? And I'm like, no. So, and I want to ask about your apartment. Was it a good area? Was it like, is there anything you want to tell about your city where you lived? Anything,
It depends on where you're talking about. So you asked earlier about where I grew up. I grew up in Cahokia, Illinois. It's right next to East St. Louis. So like my hometown is very dangerous. Like I remember I pulled up a statistic with Rolando at one point in time, and we were like ranked as like East St. Louis was one of the most dangerous cities in the world to
I
grow up in.
don't know how you survived there. And
I think you just grow up with like a different set of rules. So like of course
yeah,
you adapt. Humans are adaptable. You adapt for your environment.
that's true.
Like I never got shot because I knew how to navigate the streets in a way that I think some kids don't know how to navigate the streets. I knew how to not get mugged, or there's like street rules whenever you're walking down the street and say a guy that's bigger than you is coming the opposite direction. You don't make eye contact. You try to make your shoulders bigger. You put on a scowl. You walk like you're carrying a gun. There's a lot of stuff that you got to do in order to try
You
to
have to
secure
walk like you have a
a
gun.
gun. Like you got something in your pocket. Like if they try something, you got something to handle it. So there's a lot of stuff that you like that kids that don't grow up in areas like that have never had to have that.
To like
Like
live
a
in the
fighter,
know,
like they
yeah.
don't know what it means like fight or flight for
Right.
real. But I've had to have a fight or flight system like in my head since I was a child because I had to be cognizant of what was going on around me at all times. So whenever I was younger, I grew up in that
Yeah.
area, and so very weird, very tough situations all around. And then like right after I graduated high school, I went right to college. So I was able to like have the dorm experience, and then
Mm-hmm.
I started treating myself more because I was working my ass off.
Right.
And so like you start doing more stuff for yourself, and then like you have higher standards for what you want out of your life. Like the more that you talk to kids from college too,
Right.
and they're like, my mom has 3 cars, and I have a 2 car garage, and oh boy, and my dog's a purebred Siberian Husky poodle. You know what I mean? And you're just like, oh, great. Yeah, that's amazing. I had to try not to get shot mostly. So that's
Yeah, I
pretty fun.
remember that story when you told about the bus episode.
Yeah, I like on the city bus, and there was a group of men that stood up and like threatened to like mug me. And I had to tell them, I
And
was
the thing
like,
is, you
yeah,
just had your earphones on, so they
yeah.
they
But they
hope
knew that
that
it
you
was connected to something.
so
You saw
they
earphones.
just hope that you will not hear them.
And that, yeah. So they learned that day. I said, you may win in a fight. You may win. There's enough of you to win, but one of you is gonna be really injured. Really injured.
Guess where he had it?
I
Guess.
had a blade in my hair. You just gotta keep a blade on you whenever you grow up in a hard area. You gotta keep a good blade on you. You gotta keep a weapon on you.
This is amazing,
I had
yeah.
a friend that had brass knuckles attached to a meat cleaver that he kept in his backpack whenever we rode on the city bus.
Wow.
Yeah, like I grew up in like a really rough neighborhood. So whenever I got to college, I tried my best to dissociate from like
Right.
all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So you start working your ass off. You start buying yourself more things, and then you have like a higher standard for what you want your life to look like because now you have
Right.
something to compare it to. So I got an apartment and I lived in a gated community. So like I
Mm-hmm.
worked 3 jobs, but I paid for it.
Yep.
So I lived in a gated community, and I had a nice apartment, and I lived with two of my other friends
Nice.
from Cahokia. One of my friends that I lived there with is in Korea now with me.
Oh, and also, like, speaking about Korea, what made you come to Korea?
Oh, pretty deep. But one I've always kind of like music was like a huge part of my whole childhood. It's how I coped with living in such a rough neighborhood. So I was really into K-pop for like a blip of my life. Yeah, Shiny and Girls' Generation was like a bop, a vibe.
Nice.
So I had like an infatuation, and I always wanted to come to Asia. Period. I loved
Hmm.
Japan. I loved Korea. I loved the music in Korea. I loved the anime of Japan. I was a weeb,
But many
and it was
people
giving
come to Japan
for that.
and like, yeah, and I'm like, oh, and like, but still, because in my case it was different. I
Mhm.
was sent to Korea because I was already working for the shipbuilding yard and they just sent it to me here. So
Oh,
like they were like, okay, you're gonna be translator here, and I'm like, okay.
oh, yeah. See,
So for me, I was like, okay, oh, okay. But you made a choice to come
yeah.
here.
So I was working at the time. I hated my job. Like, okay, so my mom got diagnosed with cancer.
which is a
And
very, very bad thing. And I know why we talk about this, because cancer in America is basically, it means like government will not help you. In my
mm,
case, my mom was lucky, and my mom's breast cancer was treated for
mm,
free. She got her operation in a month, and she
mm,
was treated for free
yeah, it's not that way in
because,
America.
yeah.
It's an expensive disease to have, and they get
So
this.
the government don't help at all.
They don't offer any assistance for treatment. A lot of the time, you can apply for it, but it doesn't mean you'll get it.
Oh,
So they wanted her to apply for a treatment plan at one point, but then they noticed how aggressive the cancer was, and they missed it 3 times. So like she was hospitalized 3 times. They missed the cancer all 3 times.
shit.
So whenever you say things like, I've heard people go, capitalism's great because it really drives us to be excellent. And I was like, excellent where?
Yeah.
Because they missed my mom's cancer 3 times. So like we're not being great because capitalism is driving us forward, and like doctors chasing dollars isn't making them good doctors.
Right.
So they ended up missing the cancer 3 times. They wanted her to apply for like assistance at one point in time, but they weren't sure that she would get it. The only thing that they would offer assistance with, government assistance with, was if she applied to get on through Medicaid, or no, Medicare. Medicare, because but then they denied her Medicare because my father was still working, even though my father couldn't afford health insurance. They wouldn't put her on Medicare, even though she was of the right age to be on Medicare. They wouldn't give it to her because she was married to somebody that could still work. So the systems in America are they're terrible, and you have two political parties in America like fighting over issues that don't exist, like that are not real issues, because we've got people dying at home, in their homes, because they can't afford cancer treatment, and my mom was one of them.
Right.
So they didn't allow assistance with that, but she was able to get on a form of Medicaid that would pay for hospice but not for cancer treatment. And the doctors said that they wouldn't help with. It was a bad situation. Just boil it down to that. It was a really bad situation. Without getting too deep into like the logistics of how it all happened, what it boiled down to is they were like, you can get a second opinion, but it's going to end up with you being on hospice anyway. So why don't you just try to get on hospice, and then the end.
But hospice does not
But
help.
hospice only helps. They help with like the end of life care.
Yes,
So
exactly. They
if
don't
you
treat the
so
cancer.
get this,
They just
if you call an ambulance on hospice, so if you have an emergency situation, you feel like you're dying, if you call an ambulance to come like rescue you and to like do like intervening medical care to keep you alive, you end your hospice, because you're getting hospice contingent on the fact that you're going to die at the end of this, essentially. So like we had that talk with nurses many times. It was like really, really messed up.
Oh my god.
So, and my mom was my best friend. So I was at that time, I was working at like a really big law firm in St. Louis, but I had to take a step back from work for like 6 months while she was like, we were doing the palliative care, like the end of life care with her, but I had to be there around the clock. My mom had esophageal and stomach cancer. It was a joint cancer, so she had two forms at the same time because of where the mass formed, and so she couldn't get food down. So she had to get a feeding tube, and you had to like monitor her feedings, and we had to check her O2 with an O2 monitor. She needed around the clock care, and they also weren't like allowing that. So the kids had to come in and like really take on the brunt of like all of that. We had schedules. I can't even pull up schedules on my phone of like schedules of like Brendan will work from X time to X time, and then Brittany will come in and work this time to this time, and then Debbie's got the midnight shift with mom from this time to this time in the morning. This way, Brendan can still work from these hours to these hours. I was still working at the law firm too, so it was like having to work in law firm and then cancer schedule. I was working 2 full-time jobs essentially.
Right.
And so I had to take a step back. So I just told him, I was like, I can't do it.
Yeah.
And so I ended up like stepping away from my position, and then I got like after my mom died, like I was able to like.
I'm sorry about that.
Thank you.
Like I really like every time when a person has cancer, I hope that the cancer is like, found early and is treated, because I think it's such a bad disease.
It's a really bad
I'm
disease.
trying not to cuss, so that's why I say bad disease.
Yeah,
I would say different
really
word.
bad disease.
Yeah.
It sucks, and you're never ready for you to hear that like your loved one, especially your parent.
Oh yeah.
Especially I was like 26, 27 whenever my mom got diagnosed, And so like you're never ready to hear that as a young person because at that
Yeah.
point too, you're still like everybody lives forever. We're gonna live forever. Like
Yeah.
nobody's ever gonna
Yeah,
die.
you kind of think that like forever young.
Yeah, and I think that was like the first time that I was like faced with like mortality, and
Hmm.
like everybody that I know is gonna be dead one day, and
You kind
so
of think this way that you know, but in reality, I think we don't accept this fact. That like, yeah, we're all gonna die, but we kind of say that, but like, we still live like as if it like there is like, like, yeah, I'm
I
forever,
think I
I'm
think that
eternal.
I think that her getting cancer really was like an eye opener for me. Like you just sit with it. You sit with it for so long, and then like you sit because like they die slowly in front of you. You get to watch the deterioration. Like you get to it's I think it's different watching your loved one like pass away in such a slow way. I think
It's horrible.
sudden death is probably like worse, like bad in its own way, but like it feels more like a clean break as opposed to like having to sit and watch them get skinnier and skinnier and then them not
Yep.
want food anymore, then them
Yep.
want to not talk anymore, and then like eventually she had a stroke and she lost her ability to write in her left hand. And so like having to sit there and like type up like, I want this item to go to this person. I had to do that for her too. There was like a lot of and I'm the youngest sibling. And so like it was a lot of onus and responsibility put on me for like
Hmm.
I wasn't ready emotionally to deal with any of that. So
No.
also no mental health services offered in America for like those kinds of situations. It was bad all around. So whenever like we talk about like healthcare in America and stuff like that, it's a really sensitive topic for me because I got to see
Yeah.
just how bad it was dealing with end of life care for my mom. So yeah, it's pretty bad.
Yeah,
So
it's like I've heard also from Rolando because like his grandpa just decided I will not like take treatment because you will just go to death, all of you, so I'll just die.
so I'll just die.
And
That's
this
literally the
and
decision that you
and when
make.
I heard this, I was like, what? And people just don't fight? But then I heard that like then I heard from my coworker in America and she said, I had to sell my house to save my husband.
Yeah.
Yeah, he lived like for a bit like longer and stuff, but still he died because like it was like probably diagnosed late already.
Hmm.
And I was like, and she was like, yeah, so like $132,000 we spent on, and I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
God, this is horrible.
And that's with insurance a lot of the times. Insurance can flat out say to you, I know you've been paying your premium
Yeah,
every month, but we're not going to pay this. We won't cover it.
yeah,
So I didn't know. I didn't know how bad our system was, but I knew it was pretty bad. But a lot
yeah,
of the stuff that I did in paralegal was fighting with these health institutions who had outrageous prices. And especially in
yeah.
big cities, outrageous medical prices for things. It's like part of my job at like I worked as a personal injury paralegal for a while, and part of that job was looking at comparing cost between different facilities to be like, okay, like is this a fair charge?
Yeah.
You would like have a list, and then I was working with Medicare too, and Medicare, a lot of people are poor, so like a lot of my clients were poor. So Medicare, his name was Kevin Thornton. He's the only one in Illinois that handles like Medicare cases like this. He died of cancer. Um, Terrible disease, but I would work very closely with him. He was the one represent. It was like three actually, but for our zone, he was the one
Hmm.
person we could call for Medicare rebuttals. So I would get my clients' medicals in, and I'd be like, how in the something
Shrimping.
shrimp and grits is this a $30,000 day at the hospital? He had one overnight at the hospital. How is it $30,000?
Yeah.
So then I call the hospital and I go, send me over an itemized bill. And they're like, oh, let me see if we can pull it up. And then like a week later, you get an itemized bill. And then like you start looking at the itemized bill and you're like, and so you call the hospital back and you go, so can you explain to me why aspirin was $80? Do you know why aspirin was $80? Like, what is so great about your aspirin as opposed to aspirin that I would get from the shelf?
Wow.
Because really, I looked up the cost of aspirin, and it's not that much to manufacture or ship it. So I want to know why you personally, like, what is the handling fee that you're charging for your $80 aspirin?
I went and picked it up, right?
Yeah. So I would have those conversations, and then I would send a Medicare rebuttal to Kevin Thornton and be like, this should not be a charge that should be included. You guys should not pay
Hmm.
for this, and this. And because Medicare is the government, if they call the hospital, if Kevin Thornton sends me back a letter, which he would, I'd be like, I don't want to pay all that. I shouldn't have to. And he'll go, I'll do you one better. And Kevin Thornton will call the hospital and me, or will send me a letter, and then I'll call the hospital and go, well, Kevin Thornton says that none of those expenses should be charged. That he doesn't think that those are expenses that you guys can charge for, so you guys need to figure out something. And then you'll get what's called adjustments. So like I didn't know these existed until I worked in the field too. You'll get adjustments on medical bills, which means that it's money that the hospital goes, well, you know what? No, we're going to give you an adjustment of $30,000 on this $100,000 bill. It just means that it's money that disappears.
Well,
Yeah, it's just an adjustment. And so it's a bill adjustment. So I would call and I would work on getting bill adjustments for my clients. And so they didn't get to see all that work that goes into like the whatever it is that like puts more money in their pocket. But
I think your vocabulary is very rich after all these fights.
yeah. So dealing with different medical providers and different hospitals being just terrible. They're like it because of capitalism, it's just an industry. It's an industry
for
where
sure.
they're buying and selling like medical services to people, and that should be like baseline for society is accessibility to like decent healthcare to keep its people alive. Uh so I don't know. It really it made me lose a lot of hope in humanity, like seeing just how much, and doctors are sworn in, like you take an oath,
Yeah.
but they will upcharge you for things if you go to an ER. They will do tests that are like super expensive for no reason. I remember
Yep.
I went in, I had kidney failure, and it took them like 3 days to do a biopsy on my kidney because the procedure was so expensive. And so like they would come in and they had a financial advisor come into my hospital bed and go, well, we got to figure out how we're going to pay for this. Like whenever I was 19 years old, and they had a financial advisor come into my hospital room, and we're like, you've been here for 3 days. We're going to have to figure out what's wrong with you. Like, they're wanting to do a biopsy, but those can be really expensive. Like, give me your background. Let me see where I can apply to get you money to pay for these bills.
So basically, we're gonna let you die if you don't have money.
Yeah, basically, like you can discharge yourself at any time. You don't have to stay here.
What? You
Yeah,
can discharge?
yeah. So
And they're
like,
not gonna, oh, he discharged by himself.
yes. So like, if
God.
you don't want to rack up any bills, you can go ahead and discharge yourself, and you don't have to pay any medical bills if you don't want to. It's really, really bad. So,
Yeah.
um, the financial advisor came in, and the financial advisor told me basically, um, there's a couple of things we can do here. You can apply for aid and hope you get it, or you can just take some antibiotics and maybe go home. And I was like, I'm dying. I came in here, my kidneys are at 0 and 1% function. I'm a walking toxicity bomb. Like I have to get medical care. And my
Yeah.
mom was in the room. Again, I'm 19 years old. And I'm like, there's got to be a decision made here. You need to, like, what programs can I apply for? And she was like, well, how old are you? Like, I was like, I'm 19. I'm in school. And she was like,
Yeah.
oh, great, you're in school. And so like so she was able because SIH is interlocked with my college at that point in time. A lot of doctors from that program go and work in other areas, and it's all part of the SIH group. They were able to find a way to get me adjustments on bills that are only accessible for kids that are in school with like a Southern Illinois university. So I
So
was
you got
able.
lucky.
I got lucky. I was one of the lucky ones. I had a week-long hospital stay. I think I came out with $500 due, like to me.
Wow. That's
So
really, it's like the luckiest case.
yeah, but again, I was a college kid, so I didn't have $500, so it had to go to collections, and I wasn't able to pay it until after I graduated, and it affected my credit. So like, yeah, so like it took my credit down to like a 400 because I had no other credit except, or like a 500 because I had no other credit aside from my like a collections, which like slashed my credit. So like like people that grow up in disadvantaged situations, you don't have the same accessibility to buy homes for anything because you're always waiting. You have to work it so much longer than people that just have it. Because if it was another family, they could have just paid the $500.
Yeah.
Those kids don't have to work at their credit. They can just apply for a credit card normally because their parents have provided them all the
Mr. Brandon,
resources.
I was still rejected a credit card.
Really?
Yeah, even now when we went to US, I was still rejected a credit card. I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
So I understand
bad.
you.
It's pretty bad. I don't know. So it's just it's how our country is set up. Capitalism is terrible.
It's
Eat
all
the
around on
rich.
credit. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I
And then you decided that this kind of like schmeck system, so whatever we call it, so and then like you didn't like how the situation worked, and then you got like into the company, and
um
we're going back to career subject, so like
okay,
you
yeah,
know like
all of that was important information because my
yes,
mom dying was part of the situation, was part of the decision.
I almost cried there because
Yeah.
it's like it's because my mom is also like is not in great health condition right now, and
I'm sorry to hear that.
she also like faced like you know before breast cancer, so she
Mm,
had it, but luckily it was treated. So
mm.
I really understand what it is when your loved one is very sick and you can't help.
Yeah. You can just be there and watch them die, which is what I had to do. So there was that. I had, because my mom was like one of the only things tying me to that area. I had applied to go to Japan like as soon as I graduated. I had
Hmm.
applied through the JET program, but I got denied because I had a history of kidney failure. That
Oh,
was,
really?
yeah, it had to
Because of
be,
that?
yeah, so it has to be outside of 7 years of a hospitalization for kidney failure,
Oh,
which is like very specific, but very, it was what
wow.
happened.
Yeah.
And so I had had kidney failure too soon that I had to get a physician to sign off on it, and the physician wouldn't sign off on the travel. So I couldn't go. I applied but couldn't go. So I had to start working at a law firm.
Yeah. How
So then
many
I
years have you worked there
in America at law
at law
firms
firm?
for almost 5 years.
Dang. So
Yeah.
you got already all that, like, you know, experience and you were already slashing them, and then you're like, nah, I'm good. Like, I'll go
So
to.
I was working at like a really, like after I left my job, I didn't go back to the same firm. I went to like a different,
Hmm.
like, oh, terrible friggin' zoning, looking up deeds kind of a law. It was weird. It was terrible. I hated that job. It was so boring.
I can see you hated that.
It was so boring. And I was on the phone with my cousin one night, and he lived in Korea. He was an international school teacher, and so I was like, we're just drunk and just talking about life. And he was like, "Oh, cousin, we haven't got to live with each other in so long." And I was like, "Yeah, like maybe I'll just like quit my job. Maybe I'll just like quit my job and move to Korea." And he was like, "Yeah, I'll do it. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
do it." And I was like, "Yeah, I will do it." And so I'm a man of my word. If I say I'm going to do something, then I do it.
How much time passed after that?
Um, I quit my job at the end of that month.
Wow, you were quick.
Yeah, so like he's very thorough. We both
Hmm.
are as cousins. We're very thorough. So he sent me like a Google document with like all the steps that it took to come to Korea, like did all
Nice.
the forms that it would take in order to
Hmm.
get here, like apostilling places in St. Louis I could go
Hmm.
to, and I was like, oh, I gotta go through with it. So like I went in. I hated the job anyway, so I was gonna quit, and I was
Hmm.
like, no, I don't want to work here anymore. And so
And they just cried a little bit, like, okay, go.
I was there for like 6 months at that point in time, so like, it doesn't matter to them. Just find somebody new.
What was your first school here?
Uh, I don't want to name names of schools
Don't name.
here, but I'm gonna really rise above this one.
Okay.
Really rise above it.
Ah,
Um,
so it wasn't, you know, all the way in Seoul. It was a little bit out.
yeah, it was in an area outside of Seoul. Um, the school was
I guess.
not good. The management was abysmal. The pay was bad. The teachers that I worked with had a lot of drama that I did not want to partake in because at that time I was like 28 years old and I was like, this is baby drama. I don't want to deal with baby drama. I want to deal
After
with who
what you
knows
saw
the
in your
yeah.
life, you're like,
Like I've
what is
gone
it?
through too much to sit here and argue with children about children topics and children
All
problems.
right.
So like I've literally I watched my mother die in front of me. I don't need to sit here and talk to you
Hmm.
guys about if insert name is wow, he didn't invite me out this weekend. Do you think he's mad at me? I don't care. I don't care if he's mad at you. And I lost all threshold for like being able to like, wow, you really should be mad that Steven didn't invite you out for dinner with everyone else. I just don't care. I'll tell people that I don't care.
Yeah.
Like I don't care about it.
Honestly, yeah.
So I just didn't care, and then like I got into arguments with management about like how I hate apologizing for stuff that's not my fault, and so like I had a point system set up, and the kid got a gift that another kid didn't gift, and the manager was like, you need to go and buy the other kid another gift, and then apologize for it. And I was like, I'm not apologizing for something that they all knew. Like whenever I came here, I set up this point system. The parents knew about it. I'm not I hate sorry people. I've always said that because if you say sorry too often, you become a sorry person. And I'm not gonna live my life being eternally sorry for things. I'll only say sorry if I mean it.
Yeah, sorry, I'll just jump out of the window not to
Yeah,
upset you,
sorry.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just it just we a sorry ASS individual, a sorry individual, and I don't want to be that. Never been that. Never been encoded into my personality. So I just won't do it.
So then you, I guess, you switch the school because right now your school is so much better.
Yes. Oh my God, I love my current school.
How many years have you been to Korea right now?
Oh, it's almost been 2 years. We're
Two
coming up on
years?
2 years. Yeah,
Are
I'm
you
leaving
planning
just
to
right
go
away.
back?
I like Korea, but I am going home to America in 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a dog and I have my sisters or whatever. And I love my sisters. Shout out to my sisters. And my brothers are cool or whatever. So
I kind of like, we don't have this much time to like left because I rented the studio up to 7 p.m. So we still
mm,
have like 10 or 15 minutes.
yeah.
So I still have like, I prepared a lot of questions for you.
Mm.
But I know that you also mentioned the subjects that you want to like talk a little bit more about. So when you tell me about this words and stuff, I even don't know what I can't say because like again,
You don't want to get canceled, so I can read you what I what I said to you.
but the thing is like it's interesting for me because honestly, I always like I grew up in Soviet Union. We think
Hmm.
everybody's equal.
Yeah.
We fight for the rights for people. We also like Angela Davis, yay! And you don't even know who is Angela Davis. She was fighting for the rights of black people in America as
Hmm.
well.
Yeah.
So when I told Rolanda, she was like, "What? Who are you talking about?" And I'm like, "You don't know? All
Mm.
Soviet Union knows." But
Hmm.
again, Soviet Union
we
doesn't
we have
exist
different we have
anymore.
different heroes, of course. It's
Right.
like we have our faces like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. It's
Yep.
like we have our
This
faces of what we
we
think.
also know, yeah. We
Yeah,
also have Afro Russians in Moscow because
yeah,
like because for me it's like and right now they're also like the movie stars and like also like they have their own shows and like they're actors and actresses like all this. So like there is no I think because I think that there is no inequality there. So that's why for me it is also still weird to hear today in
we have all those things too.
2023.
That's the thing.
But
Whenever we start to look at the highest performing people of that race, like TV stars, whatever high earner people, like we have Beyonce and Jay-Z, of course. Those are billionaires.
well
Those
yeah.
aren't everyday black people. There are systems that be part of it's capitalism, part of it's they're like the good black people in the eyes of a lot of white people. Like they're Jay Z and Beyonce. We love Jay Z and Beyonce as long as they're not too black. You know what I mean? So
I want to interrupt you a little bit, and we kind of had this kind of talk at home, and I was like, don't you think it's weird that sometimes when like people are like at the street or in the line or in the shop, um, and if it is like, white people talking, right? It's like, oh, look at that woman with that purse or in that skirt or whatever. But when people talk about black people, look at the black lady. Why we can't say the same thing? Look at the lady with that purse.
because that's their first identifier. That's one of the things. Like a common question that like was pretty popular for a while would be like, oh, what are your identifiers? Like, what are the things that you think about whenever you think about yourself? Like, what are your top three identifiers? And so I think like most people, like if you were to see me, I'd be like, what is my identifier for you? And people would be like, I don't know, fat. I'd be like, okay, period.
I
That's
think
honesty.
smart.
But that's after you've gotten to know me. If I was walking down the street, you'd never
I
talked to me before. You
but
wouldn't
I
look at me and
would
be like, wow, what a smart guy.
no, I would think you're cute.
Okay, cute. Yeah. So like for me, like my first identifier is fat. I think I identify with my largeness first. I identify with my blackness second, and my queerness third. So like all of those things are like my identifiers for myself. So it's a very common thing. So whenever a white woman sees another white woman, it's a non-factor for her. It's already established that she has like a general baseline of who she is as a person because she's white. We have a lot of stereotypes for white people, so it's much easier to
Yeah.
focus on, wow, where'd that top come from, or where'd this come from, because you're not having to hurdle over, wow, you're black. It's like a shock, like a wow, whoo, whoo. Never seen one of those before. That's different. So it's much easier. So like a black person talking to another black person, they would be able to skip that step too. Say, oh, like, oh, I know you're black. I can see that. I have a baseline in my head for like what.
But why can't people just talk normally without this, like to each other. It doesn't
because of
matter.
years of slavery and
Yeah,
racism in our
exactly.
country.
It's
So
still like I
like,
think it's still residue of that is in the
yes,
back
but
of the.
convincing white people that that's true, because like you said earlier, you're like, oh, like, the Afro Russians are like doing really great. But like, I think it's much easier as a person that presents in a certain way, like, or that presents in a Caucasian way. It's much easier for them to go, wow, black people are doing just as good of us. I mean, look at Beyonce. They've got so many good blacks. They've got Jay-Z, and they've got Beyonce and Destiny's Child and
Mhm.
Idris Elba. All of those are black people, and they're rich. So black people are probably doing a-okay.
And the
But
thing is,
no,
like,
they're not.
it's also like this kind of blame. So if you didn't do good enough,
Like,
then it's
look
your
at Beyonce
fault.
and Jay-Z.
Yeah,
They
so
did
they
great.
could, right? They could. So what stops you,
Yeah,
right? All
exactly.
that.
Systemic racism stops us 9 times out of 10. All the problems that I listed earlier about like
Mm-hmm.
not like getting medical expenses out of nowhere that set my
Yeah.
credit back, that I have to work up now, that gives me a later start in life, not being able to. I think that hand in hand, because of the years of racism that we experienced in our country, we are behind. We're behind educationally. Like, we weren't black people during slavery weren't allowed to have books or read books. You could be whipped and killed for reading books.
What do you think will America have to take? What steps to eliminate that, or at least to move to the
First, I did
better thing?
like first say out loud that there's a problem. Like, now we're like, and we need to quit talking about racism, and like, or
Well,
it's also so muted. So like, even there was a movement in America called Black Lives Matter, because
yeah.
black people are disproportionately killed by police officers more than white people are. Like, especially for how many black people there are in America opposed to how many white people there are in America. And so, like, white people will go, well, that's because you guys commit more crimes. I'm like, no, hold on now, Timothy. It's not that black people commit more crimes, it's that they're stopped and convicted
Right.
of more crimes than what white people are. That is what's happening.
Some cases are like I look at them and I'm like, how come that he just goes out of the prison?
And
It's
it's
just
much
like he was like
easier.
locked for 2 days or 2 weeks and
we're
he's
still, we're still
gone.
we're still passing laws with, like, say, Hispanic people or people that come from Mexico in our country being able to be stopped in a state that they are legally allowed to live in, and asked about their paperwork. Like, do you have a green card to be here? I don't know. You look a little bit too dark, a little bit too south of the border for you to be from America. And they can, like, there was stop laws in different places like Arizona. Like, you could stop somebody and question about their paperwork or their standing in the country, and black people get pulled over. It's true. And black people
Yeah.
get pulled over a lot more than white people do, because you see a black person in a car. I have a story with my cousin Clayton. My cousin is blonde haired, blue eyed. And we were 16 years old. We were going to go buy milk and Pepsi. So we're in the car. My cousin does like a U turn. It's not an illegal U turn. He did it in a parking lot. But a cop saw it as suspicious behavior. And so he pulled over my cousin, and I'm black and I'm in the passenger seat, and I'm black presenting at that. And he pulls, like, he asked my cousin to come get out of the car. He calls for backup one. We're 16 and we have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
We had to turn around because we were going to like an off-brand grocery store that doesn't sell Pepsi. They only sold milk, and they wanted on-brand Pepsi that night for family game night or whatever it was that we were
Hmm.
doing. And so, like, one cop pulls him aside, and then the other cop comes and bangs with his flashlight on my side of the car. And I'm like, my mom had that talk with me whenever I was a kid, that like cops see me differently than what they'll see my cousins. All my cousins that I hung out with are blonde hair, blue eyed, and white. And so, like, I had to have the talk early that, like, they're going to be seen by the police a certain way, and I will be seen by the police a certain way.
I still can't wrap my head
It's
around
a crazy
this.
thing. But the cop that was talking to me asked me all of these weird questions. It was super aggressive with me, but I was super compliant. I'm always very compliant because I was told that for me, it's life or death. And if I act a certain way or put my hands in my pockets a certain way, it could mean that I'm gonna get shot, or they're gonna take it as like an aggressive posture. So I had to learn how to speak very articulately, like say what I mean the first time succinctly, so that I could limit my chances of like being injured in a arrest or a pullover or anything like that. So the cop that talks to me, he's like got a notepad and a pen, and he's like, "Oh, what? I hear from him that you guys are cousins," and does the air quotes. And I was like, "Yeah, that's my cousin." And so he was like, "Okay, well, if he's your cousin, these should be pretty easy questions for you to answer." I said, "Okay, and ask him."
Yeah.
He was like, "What's your grandma's maiden name?" And I was like, "Boren, Boren, Boren." And he was like, "Okay." And he was like, and what's your mother's name? Connie Bant. Her maiden name was Boren, same as my grandma. And just goes down this list asking my whole family history
Oh my God.
to prove that me and Clayton were cousins. And so I could hear Clayton getting very upset off to the side. And I was like, calm down. You got to bring it down a notch. But he's white, blonde hair, blue eyed, like football player and baseball player, very all American boy. And he's off to the side. How are you guys doing this? You guys shouldn't be doing this. That's my cousin. That's my. And I'm like, calm down. Calm down. I'm going to go get me shot. And so the police officers, like, just like, we didn't do anything wrong. So they had to let us go. And so, like, we got back in the car, and I was like, and so he was like, what was that? And I was like, racism, Clayton. It was racism. I said, and so the cop told him, he was like, listen, I know that you're buying drugs from him. Like saying that I was selling my cousin drugs and that we weren't actually related. So he needed to quit lying and tell the truth, essentially. And my cousin was like, that is my cousin. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't do drugs, neither does he. Very clearly, we don't do drugs. So I don't know why you stopped us. Well, you made a weird turn in a neighborhood that people sell a lot of drugs out of. And I was, and so he was like, if you give him up right now as a drug dealer, we will let you go. If you give him up as your drug dealer, we'll let you go. And he was like, I'd love to give up my drug dealer right now, but that's my legitimate blood cousin. And so like after they did the family, and then one of the dumbest questions was, how is he your cousin? And I said, well, Lorraine Boren had children, and of those four kids that she had,
have children.
Yeah, of those four kids that she had Scott, Connie, Debbie, and Tammy. And my mom happens to be the Connie in that situation. Then my mom met a man and she had a kid. And then Scott met a woman and he had a kid. And now we're cousins. And I said it just like that to him. And I was like, I am trying my darndest right now not to sound condescending, but you just asked me how we're cousins. And that is a lovely, stupid question. What a stupid thing to ask me. By blood. And so my cousin was like, I just never been so mad in my life before. It's just like, it's so unfair. And I was like, yeah, racism, and he got pulled over. He got pulled over like for driving as a white person in a all black neighborhood because they thought he was going to go buy drugs. So like, it's very much so that it's very like you can get stopped and arrested for more things as a black person because they see your skin color as a weapon or as a reason for you to be suspicious.
Dang. So we have to wrap up, I guess, because like we're almost out of our time in this lovely studio. I really love this, like the view. I don't know if you can see the view or not, but like the view is gorgeous.
Yeah.
So what can you tell to people? So like I really enjoyed your story, but I really think we didn't cover even like one like third of the questions I prepared for you because I know it's just a free speech.
Yeah.
But I wanted to have at least a slice of your life. I wanted to show like who you are because I think you're a wonderful person, very smart, very like, feeling, because I think that like to open up to other people is a great skill. Not everybody can speak freely. So I really think you're a very feeling and like touching person. So you impressed me a lot. Thank you so much for coming here. And what can you tell to people?
Like a sentence.
A wish, sentence, I don't know, joke, whatever you want. Be you.
I don't know. Talking is good. Yeah.
Enjoy this gorgeous man.
You should talk to people more.
Right? Mouth is for talking.
Yeah. I don't know. Be open to new experiences that other people have experienced. And say no less.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I would say. Say no less.
Yep, that's great. So we can do Korean heart maybe? Yay.
How does it work?
Like this. I don't know. My husband is saying something to me.
But don't forget to ask them to like and subscribe.
Oh yeah. I'm still so fresh and young in this industry. Like and subscribe and follow. Love you guys.
you.
Bye,
Thank you, Mr.
everyone.
Brendan.
No problem.
Thanks.
Bye bye.
Look here, it's so good. That's all the white
Wee.
space. Bye.